All right, so welcome everyone. I am so pleased that we were able to have Debbie
Mirza.
Mirza. I know I was saying it a different way. Mirza,
Yeah.
join us for this author talk tonight. I myself, I wanted, I contacted her because my life has been changed by reading certainly this book that she wrote or published back in 2017. It's and I'm gonna have a hard time because I've got my background on, but the Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist is um, is my initial reason for inviting her to come speak. Um, I am going to go ahead and share my screen for a minute here and just show.
Oh, very cool. Look at that.
I just wanted to let everyone know. So yes, this is prompted by the Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist, which is also available in Spanish. These books are available at Prince William Public Libraries in our print collection. We purchased The Safest Place Possible, as well as Debbie's newest book, Worthy of Love, which really does go much further into how you heal after being in relationship with, it could be a covert narcissist, it probably could just be any narcissist or abusive, dysfunctional relationship.
Mhm.
She does have an audio version of Worthy of Love available through Audible. So we weren't able to get that because Audible has the exclusive rights. But we do have the ebook of Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist available through our Overdrive platform. And if you have not, if you happen to be local, I don't think we have too many local people, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. Oops, let me go back. If you happen to be local and haven't gotten a library card or used our Overdrive service, please do check that out because um, there's a lot there's a lot on there in addition to Debbie's books, or at least the one book is on ebook.
All three of those books, the English version, are on Audible too, if people like
Oh,
the audio version.
oh, good to know because I can think I only thought it was Worthy of Love. So thank you so much for pointing that out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Since we just have a smaller group of people, you guys could actually put in the chat. I was curious, and I thought it might help Debbie too in terms of how she formulates her answers. How many people have read The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist already?
Oh, and I see someone I know is here. I won't say your name since it's being recorded, but hi. Twice. That's amazing. Wow. Oh, safest place. Always touches my heart when I see that. Oh, amazing. Watched all my videos too. Oh, I'll probably cry on this call. Yeah, for people who have read my books, I just feel an instant bond, you know? Like I know we have this. We're a part of a tribe we never knew existed, and we get it.
And I will say, though I did have a brief interaction with someone earlier, just confirming the time, and the person talked about basically, your book saving her life.
Mm,
And I know for me, I consider your book to be life changing. Um, and we will get further into why that is. But I did want to go ahead and start off by just asking you why you wrote the book.
yeah. Yeah, and I just have to say I'm so touched by hearing you say that and reading. Oh my gosh, I'm just, yeah, some of these are really bringing tears to my eyes just right off the bat. Um, what brought me to write it? It's so interesting when you flash up the picture of all those books. It's like a future I never saw coming for my life. So it's just like, wow, to see, you just kind of do things one day at a time, and then suddenly there's these books in front of you. Yeah, this is something I never planned on doing. I didn't dream as a child when I grew up. Um, for me, I had been in a relationship, and I'm kind of vague about it for my own protection, but it was a very long romantic relationship. And yeah. So during the discard phase, as you all know, it's incredibly painful, incredibly confusing, so much cognitive dissonance, and it just wrecks you. And it wrecked me. And it was a few years. So it was during the discard that discovered narcissism. Someone said to me, it seems like the person you were with is a narcissist. And that shocked me because this was not someone I would say, oh, yeah, definitely. This was someone who was well liked, who appears really laid back, who really didn't, yell at me, never hit me, never what I would consider abuse and narcissistic abuse. I wouldn't have labeled that with this person. So I was like, huh. And I asked, like, why are you saying that? And they listed traits that they were hearing in my story. And so I was confused, but also very intrigued because those traits did line up, but I never associated it with narcissism. And I didn't really even know a lot about narcissism. So they said, I suggest you get a hold of, as many books as you can on this topic. So I did. And that started me, I'm sure a lot of you will relate that when you start reading books about narcissism, if you were with a covert narcissist, especially if they were very covert, some of it lines up, but it's not the complete picture. And so that makes it, then you're like, am I on the right track? But there was enough to keep me researching. Finally, after different therapists and coaches and reading and studying, I had a session with a woman who said, it sounds like you were with a covert passive aggressive narcissist, and they're the most difficult to recognize and to diagnose. And when she said those words, those were the pieces that of the puzzle I needed. So that launched me on a whole, now I had the words to do searches in. That launched me on a whole journey of discovering what is a covert narcissist. And at that time, there was no book, and I was piecing a lot together. And on YouTube there's accuracy and then there's misinformation. So you're trying to like sort out what's, right and what's just kind of this own person's thoughts or experiences. And so that was a large part of my life. Then, that's all in your head. And then my heart was so affected, as everyone knows, and I just hit a wall where I just broke down. And that's when started my kind of cocooning phase where the world was too much. Everything was too much. Everything was too loud. And so I started doing a lot of deeper healing during that time. So now, fast forward 3 years after the discard, as you all know, I'm sure if once you leave a narcissist, the abuse doesn't stop. They don't leave you alone, and so the controlling and the manipulation and the mind games and the gaslighting continued. Um, and so I received an email that was really abusive. And by that time, I had gotten a lot stronger. And I wrote back and I said, if you send me any more abusive emails like this, I'm going to have to block you. And he wrote back very quickly this 3-page, single spaced fire hose of abuse. And after I read that, I'm sure all of you can relate to the feeling of trauma that ripples through your body at that point. And that's what I felt. And I kind of went into it's a semi catatonic state for 3 days where I just didn't talk. I stared out the window and then I would have bouts of crying and then numbness. And it was the third morning that I woke up. I'd wake up crying each morning. And the third, because it had just been so much. As you know, narcissistic abuse is a buildup over time. It's not like one day they were cruel. So it builds and builds and builds in your body until you just can't take it anymore. So that's the place I reached. And the third morning I woke up and I was crying again. And then I kind of like laid there and I was just, my tears and my sadness started shifting into this anger. I thought, I know I'm not the only one. And I pictured all these other people going through this at the same time, and we don't know that we're not alone, because by that time I had done so much research. I knew I wasn't alone. And I laid there and I like kind of spiritual experience of laying there and my eyes were closed and I literally saw, I hadn't thought about writing a book, but I literally saw the cover of a book that said The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist in big bold capital letters. And it felt like an invitation, like, would you do it? And I at that point I just had that feeling of a warrior, princess, goddess. I'm ready to take up arms and fight. I just almost reach a place where it's like, I'm done crying. That's it. This is enough. And so, yeah, so I thought about it for a long time. I talked to good friends of mine about it and what do you think? And so I decide, because knowing myself, if I do anything I'm passionate about, I put my full self into it. So I knew this would be my number one priority. So I spent that year interviewing people because I didn't want it to be just about my story. I wanted people who had been in all types of relationships to be able to see themselves, in the workplace, parents, who are covert narcissists, siblings, friends, lovers, um, spouses, all that. So yeah, I spent a year doing massive research, interviewing people. Part of my research was I got out a stack of of journals I had kept since forever, since high school, but I read from the time I met this person till now, and it was so eye-opening because I could see more clearly now what is abuse that I couldn't see back then. So that's all to say that's what made me write the book.
And I want to dig further into several things that you've said.
Sure.
For the purposes of, I think maybe a third of our attendees who are meeting you for the first time
Hmm.
tonight, let me just kind of review quickly the definition of narcissistic personality disorder. And Debbie had already talked a little bit about what we think of as narcissism, what we're used to associating with typical narcissism, overt narcissism. Um, so it's comprises a persistent manner of grandiosity, a continuous desire for admiration, along with a lack of empathy. And then, of course, when you get into the DSM-5, they do have 9 standards that they say if for someone to be considered having narcissistic personality disorder, they would meet 5 out of these 9. And so there are, obviously a lot of the standards that get into people wanting admiration, people feeling entitled, um, feeling very grandiose and things like that, which is not necessarily, and I know Debbie will address this more, but what we really see with the covert type or vulnerable type. So those are the things that we really want to get into, and why this, at least for me, I had no. I will say that I had grown up with someone who was close to me in my family who was very much a textbook overt narcissist. So I eventually had learned about that and was familiar with that, but I did not really understand about this covert form until I read Debbie's book, and it was really really revealing for me. So um, I just want to make sure that everybody knows kind of where it starts in terms of the official definition. But oops, if I move my mouse at all, it goes. I'll go back to Debbie now. But Debbie, can you talk more about the covert aspect and how that can almost seem to fly in the face of some of those characteristics of the overt narcissist?
Yeah, definitely. So all those traits that you saw that are the traits of, they have to be at least 5 out of the 9 to be classified as narcissistic personality disorder. They are all exactly the same for a covert narcissist, but the way these traits manifest is in a very subtle and covert and under the radar way. So for instance, one that says they don't have empathy. With this person I was with, that was something that never occurred to me. I never thought this person doesn't have empathy, because a lot of covert narcissists kind of, someone said to me about this person, it seems like whenever I talk to him, he sounds scripted, you know? And a lot of covert narcissists will sound that way. They have this kind of strange hollowness to them. When you look in their eyes, it's like, who are you? Are you even in there? There's kind of this blank creepiness. So they might have, they will learn how to act certain ways, but it's not genuine. So you might see them caring for someone else, like someone's telling a story and being vulnerable, and they might take their hand, or they might go, oh, I'm so sorry. So it looks like they're being empathetic, but the thing to tell the difference is, how does your body feel? When you have someone who is being truly empathetic to you, when you're sharing your heart and you can feel, you can see in their eyes and you can feel the empathy, you don't feel that from a covert narcissist. So that's where it gets tricky, because you see someone who appears like they care, but it's not real. And it's often used to manipulate, because a lot of them, many of them are very attuned to psychology. They're very, like, they're almost kind of the smarter version of the narcissist, or like craftier, like I would say, like, my alarm bells always go off when someone talks about a politician or a celebrity or someone famous, that they're like, whenever, you meet them, you feel like you're the only person in the room, and they look you in the eyes and you just feel like they care about you so much. Like, immediately I have red flags go up. Not that it can't be genuine, but people who are fed so much attention in those positions are often covert narcissists, but you would never look at them as like, oh, this person is super selfish. They're all into themselves. Because, and this can be religious leaders and coaches and therapists and humanitarians and people that appear so good, and they'll be nice to people and they'll look in their eyes and they'll show empathy, but it's not real. It's like a way of love bombing people and gaining their trust. So that it gets, this type of narcissist gets so confusing, because you can be, like, for example, you can be in maybe you're at a spiritual retreat, you're at like a yoga retreat, meditation. And, I was talking, so this is a real example of a friend of mine that went to one of these retreats, and the head leader person, the head guru or whatever, was being really inappropriate with women. And so these women came to him, or one woman or a couple came to him and confronted him about this. And they said, basically, yeah, they confronted him. And what he did with that is he turned it around, which is a common thing they'll do. And he was like, so what is this bringing up in you? What do you think that it's triggering something? So let's look at where, and then suddenly you feel like, oh, wait, this is my issue. And then you're being so gaslit that you can't even see what's true. And what's true is he was being inappropriate with women. So that's an example of how the control, the manipulation, the gaslighting can happen with a covert narcissist where you don't see it happening.
That they're never going to take responsibility. They're never, so
Mhm.
it is going to either be projected back, or what I have found is, in trying to confront something, there'll be a lot of anger, like like an extraordinary reaction. It's a lot of anger. Whereas if you were to talk to what I call a normal person, which
Right.
within a
Healthy. Yeah. Hmm.
that person might say, oh, like, oh, I didn't realize I was coming across. Oh, I'm sorry, or something like that.
Right.
Or they may say sorry, but they don't really mean it. It's definitely just disingenuous from the narcissist. And I think I've also encountered it where it's maybe someone who's, like you said, a humanitarian. It could be someone like at a, from church who does all these good works, but somehow when you're talking to the person, you just never really feel comfortable. And there's something about it that doesn't ring true. And your mind will, for me, it's like my mind will often want to take over and say, oh, but look, this person is doing all these good things. Like I will, like the thing you said about listening to your body, I find is really difficult for women in general. I think that sometimes, and it's not just women, I know we've got not just all women on here, but
Mm.
we're not really good in our society about being tuned into that intuition. So our mind will override and say, well, but look at what they're doing. They're doing all of these things, but they often do those things not necessarily for some altruistic goal, but because they're feeding that ego with those humble, seemingly humble deeds.
Exactly. Yeah, and people in power who are in what seems like a helping position, if they're a covert narcissist, their audience, their congregation, their yoga class, whatever is their supply. So, yeah.
And Debbie, I'm noticing we're about at our halfway point, and we haven't really necessarily opened it up for questions, but is this a good point maybe where we've talked enough about what this personality is? And I think for anyone who hasn't read the book yet, please go get the book, whether it's at the library or off of Amazon, to dig further into this. But I did notice that someone had posted a question, getting into when you finally start to realize that how disingenuous this person is, especially if you're, in a pretty close relationship with them. Um, the question is, how do you get past that anger and wanting to let everybody know this person is fake?
Yeah, so understandable. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll answer that in two ways. I want to talk about the anger and then the wanting everyone to know, how fake they are. Um, I would say one way you get back, you get, how is it worded? You get past this anger. It would be unhealthy to jump past it because anger is a real and true and needed emotion at times. And so anger's fine as long as we don't hurt anyone else with it. Anger's good, in fact, all there's no bad emotion. It's just what we do with it. So I would encourage you to let yourself be angry and let it out. Whether that's through exercise, through running, through punching, through boxing, through, whatever, through screaming, through angry dancing, whatever you is helpful for you to let that out and to let yourself and give yourself permission to be angry because there's big reason to be angry. I know for the nervous system, I've done a lot of study on the nervous system, and it's really not healthy. We all want to be, like, a lot of us want to be peaceful people. And so sometimes we'll turn to meditation or prayer or things to like calm us down. And that's actually not helpful for the nervous system. It's helpful when the emotions rise up to let them be and do whatever you need and would feel good. So I would say that. As far as, it's a tricky one. I so feel the one of like wanting other people to know the truth. It's really maddening and frustrating. And especially if you see that person appear like they're doing fine. That's the other thing that's so painful is when you separate from a covert narcissist, your love for them was real and you feel so much devastation and pain, and they don't. You watch them and they're fine and they quickly move on to someone else, and that's devastating and that makes you enraged too. And so then and then other people, they're flying monkeys, and other people still see them as good. And then, yeah, so that stuff is really hard. I think a couple things to know: whatever they are presenting is not the truth, because someone who lives so selfishly and has no empathy and has no care for other people is, in my mind, completely disconnected from their soul. And someone who's like that, it's literally impossible for them to be happy and enjoy life in a real way. You know, they can kind of manufacture a form of happiness, but it will never be true. So I think sometimes that's helpful just for us to know, you know, when they appear so fine. The other thing I've found, as far as like, for a long time, I wanted people to see the truth. And then I've noticed the more just from my own experience, the more I've healed and the more I'm living my life, honoring my heart and doing things I love, the happier I'm becoming. And the happier I become, the less I care. You know, the less I care what other people think, because and not that I don't want to give the impression I'm like happy all the time. I have my emotional waves and my issues and all that stuff. But in general, I am going towards, I'm on an uphill, like a positive climb, because I'm relearning who I am and I'm discovering what my heart really wants. And I'm honoring that more than ever. And I'm saying no to things I don't want to do more than ever. And the more we do that, and that's not something that happens right away, you know, over time, I think you'll find yourself not caring. You know, there are definitely stages where we care tremendously, but I think that will wane the more you love yourself, the more you take care of yourself, the more you pursue what lights you up and makes you feel alive. So that's how I would answer that one.
And so this next question certainly ties back into if you're divorcing covert narcissist, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone going through a divorce with a CPAN?
Yeah, I'd love to answer this. There's so many things to say. First, I would say, and it's hard to know, like, do you have kids? There's like so much. So let me think. When you're going through a divorce, you've got to recognize you are in the height of pain and stress. So not only, and it's good for us to recognize that, like, this is not a normal time for you um in life. So this is a time when you are dealing with massive hurt, a discovery maybe that you've been with a narcissist that you didn't realize you were. And then all the logistics, you know, if you have to move and figuring out a settlement, and if there's kids, you know, it's a time in your life where you have to make these big life decisions at a time where you can barely get out of bed, you know? So, first of all, recognize that and be incredibly kind to yourself. Move as slowly as you can. Um, I would have some kind of support group that can help you think clearly, because this is a time that can feel so muddled and you can be in the middle of your stress. It's hard to see clearly. If, you know, depending on your financial situation, if you can get a really good attorney, I would look for someone who understands narcissistic abuse and can really fight for you. Um, Understand that you're not dealing with a normal person. So most advice you get doesn't apply. So I would go on to narcissistic support groups. I would, you know, maybe find a local support group in your area if you can. But find other people that understand this and can be a support and help to you during this time. Take lots of naps. Do things, little things that feel nurturing to you, whether that's taking a bath, whether that's going to the park, whether it's listening to your favorite music, anything that will bring you calm and make you feel like you are worthy of care. And
And
know this will pass. And know you won't always feel this way. And know over time you're going to get stronger and this is an ending. And someday you're going to look back and say, thank goodness I got out, and be really proud of yourself for getting out. And you're going to get on the other side of this, and you have a whole life ahead of you that you can't even imagine. When I went through my discard, I had no idea that I would be talking to you right now after writing a few books. No idea. When I left, I thought I was going to be homeless. I was told I was going to be homeless. I had no idea how I was going to support myself, support my kids. I was lost. I was dazed. I was confused. I was a wreck. So just know that you in a few years is going to be a very different you than you are now. And this, in many ways, for me was the beginning of my awakening, and the beginning of my freedom, and so someday you're going to have that clarity, and it's going to be amazing.
All right. Debbie, I want to go ahead and ask this next question. Um, the person is saying, I can't figure out why the covert narcissist seems to do so much for others and not for their spouse, even if they were doing something for supply. And we haven't really talked a little bit about narcissistic supply, but wouldn't they want to get adoration from their spouse instead of anger and disappointment?
I think that it's much easier to be out in the world and to be the hero for other people or appear like the hero than when you're home and someone really sees you and is a normal person with normal insecurities. And living with someone's a whole different story than if you get to go out, like you're a narcissist, and maybe you're hero worshipped at your job, or hero worshipped at church, or hero worshipped, somewhere else. It's much easier to get that like fix from your supply than when you're home. They can't really fully hide, and they can't really, they're really, I don't like the word incapable, because everyone's capable, but the life they're choosing, they're not able to have a real relationship with you. And deep down, they know that, I think, even though they're like completely unaware of that. So I think it's a totally different story when they are with you at home versus out in the public.
Yeah, I think they really struggle with intimacy.
Yeah.
And so going back into this, I think in terms of being post-divorce with one, do you have advice for co-parenting with a covert narcissist? And I'm going to throw in that some people have also suggested another title that may be very helpful for that topic is the parallel parenting solution, another book that can help with that. But what are your thoughts on that, Debbie?
Yeah, in fact, I created an online course all about parenting when your ex is a covert narcissist, because it's a big thing. And it's not, and again, like normal advice doesn't usually apply. So I would say in that situation, I would look at it as your kids are going to see two ways of living. They're going to see yours, and they're going to see their other parent, the covert narcissist way. There's nothing you can do about that, but you can be the parent you want to be for them. I think that a big thing you can do for them is to really heal and take care of yourself, because that's showing them how to take care of themselves as well. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have a chance. There's going to be a lot of feelings like of sadness, like you didn't want this for them. You didn't bring them into this world knowing this was going to happen to their lives. But you still have an incredible amount of influence on their lives, and you are the picture of love for them. And so would, you know, I would really take that on, not as a pressure, to be perfect. And I think it's really important to be honest with kids, like depending on what age, they are. It's really important to show them love. And I think, it gets tricky because it's like you don't want to badmouth your ex, but you also don't want to act like their behavior is okay because that's not helpful to your child too. And again, it depends on the age of the kids, what's appropriate, but there are times like if they go visit their dad or mom, who's the covert narcissist, and they come back, I, you know, you want your home to be a safe place where they feel like they can tell you anything. And so that takes a lot of strength because you have your own anger at them, which is totally understandable. But that's when you need to keep that to yourself and take it to a therapist or to a friend, and not to them. But I think it's really helpful to talk through if they come to you and say, dad said this or mom said this, and you can tell they're really being affected. I think it's important to take those times and talk it through with them and go, how did that make you feel? And help them get back in their body too, because that's going to let them or that's going to help them learn how to notice their own body signals, like we weren't raised to do. So to ask like where in your body did you feel that? How did that feel? And then to point out, okay, I just want you to know I'm not putting down your dad or mom, but I want to give you a picture what love would have looked like, you know? So you said this to them, they said this to you, that was hurtful. This is what love would have sounded like. Love would have said to you, I understand how you feel. Please tell me more. I care about your heart. So I think it's a really good opportunity to shift things for your kids through conversations, and this will be over years, and help them get clarity on what love actually looks like, and also help them to access their bodily signals and to recognize, okay, when your stomach's tight, listen to that. There's something you're picking up because you're very smart and your body's very smart. So let's talk about that. There's a lot you can say on that topic, but there's some things for you.
Yes, and there was another question that I think you may have covered this now in terms of someone asking how can you best help your children with the CN parent and stopping the cycle of abuse when they're court ordered to spend time with that parent and it is a toxic environment.
Actually, I will say one thing about that. I would check with your attorney, depending on the laws of your state or your country where you are. There are certain places that have a have a law that at a certain age the child can choose. So like for instance, if you're in a mediation situation, talk to your attorney and say at what age can we write in here when this kid turns 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and it's their time to go to their other parent, they get to choose. So it sometimes that's a possibility. So that's something you could check out too as a way to protect them.
Okay, and so there's some couple follow-ups related to that. I'm going to just skip the one since it's a tangent to this topic.
Mhm.
Um, it's how can you make the case for the child when the state doesn't have an age?
How can you make the case for the child? Um, I think that's more of a question for an attorney because I'm not sure, what laws, because laws are different everywhere. Um, so I think I would start there. Yeah, I think that would be tricky for me to understand or answer without knowing more. But I would say talk to your attorney. I would also say meet with a therapist in your area and tell them the situation and ask, what do you recommend I do to protect my kids in this situation?
Um, and I don't want to lose the one question. There's just a follow-up to tips on working with a parenting consultant when the other parent is a covert narcissist, like wanting to help that person see those patterns. besides share your book with the person.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good idea. I've had a lot of people tell me they bring my book to their therapist or to a parenting consult. You know, people that are helping you, it is really helpful. You need them to understand what this is because not therapist, and I don't know about, you know, parenting consultants. I wouldn't think, yeah, I don't know what their background or education is. As far as therapists, so far, they're not taught anything about a covert narcissist. So it's not their fault. They don't know. It's just not a part of the education. So yeah, it's really helpful. Um, yeah, like you said, to bring my book to them and ask them to read it.
And then skipping back to that one, how do you deal with a narcissist that you have to interact with every day?
Can you write what the situation is? Like, is that a work situation or what would make you have to? That might give me more information to respond to.
Yes, and I will just interject with that, I know we're talking about very serious relationships.
Hmm.
And the parenting obviously is a huge concern for people who have been married or involved to that degree with one. But now that I've read your book, I see this in so many areas.
Hmm.
Um, I've even been in work situations where we're trying to figure out what interview questions to ask that might actually allow us to know whether or not we're hiring someone, because
Oh, brilliant.
giving constructive feedback to a narcissist doesn't really work once they're in the job and
Right.
things start to go awry. So, it's everywhere. And it's a challenge. And sometimes they can be very good, like you said, putting on that sort of politician face and giving people what they want, mirroring, what we think we want. But then when you start to actually get to know the person, all of a sudden, I have had situations of trying to give feedback to an employee, and I'm not going to make much headway because while they may not have presented as someone who cares about flashy cars and their looks, they really are fitting into another version of narcissist, and hearing anything other than they're great is really not acceptable to them.
Right.
So it's challenging in all kinds of aspects of our lives. And
Definitely.
so
I'm
I do.
seeing they said it's a work environment, it sounds like, but previous romantic relationship. That makes it even trickier before the discard. Okay, got it. Well, I would say, if you have you heard of the gray rock method? That's what comes to mind. What that is when you're around, when you know, have to be around them for whatever reason, um, one way to deal with it is the gray rock method. And what that means is, so since we become supplies for them, whatever energy we give them, they are like energy vampires and they will drain us of that and we will end up feeling exhausted. So one way to do that is, okay, so like as an illustration, the way I'm talking with my hands and I'm passionate and you can feel it, this is energy I'm putting out there, towards you. A gray rock would look like this. And it's like it goes completely against my nature and a lot of your others. And it takes like, yeah. But anyway, I want you to notice the difference. Okay. So yeah, what you want to do is use the gray rock method. That's it. I gave no energy. So you want to be say as little words as you possibly can. You really want to be robotic. If you have to speak to them in any manner, just the facts, you become the most boring person in the world. And you'll notice, like if you practice with a friend, like I'm noticing the energy right now I'm putting out. But when I do the just like this gray rock, I can feel the energy all stays here with me. None of it goes out. So that's one way for you to protect yourself and to keep your energy instead of giving it away to people that harm you. That's one thing. I would suggest for that environment.
Let's see if we can fit in a couple more questions. For one person, my CN is my sister. I have done so much for her, and it's so hard to accept that she never loved me. How do you accept what you gave your whole life to was for nothing?
I totally feel that. I totally feel that because I've been through it myself. And once you discover one in your life, then your eyes start opening to all the others that have been there and Benny for a long time. Okay, so let me think about how I want to answer this. Yeah, so you've given, 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 and it feels like a waste. I think with things like that, we have to reframe things and look at it differently for our own sanity and for our own heart. I actually, you know what? My son gave me really good advice that I'm going to use for you. Because I can obsess over stuff I've done in the past. I can obsess over money I have drained to give to people I love that were not healthy relationships for me. So much time I've given to people, so many decisions I've made with interactions with other people. And I could look at all that stuff as I can stew over that stuff. Like, and I feel like I wasted so much time and I wasted so much money, and we can get caught in this mental loop that just keeps us stuck and it keeps us feeling helpless. And that's not helpful for us either. So my son said to me this recently, he's like, what if you could look at each thing like as they come up to your mind? Because you know how our mind will do that. It's just a database of memories, and it can haunt us. And so we'll just be doing the dishes, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that money you gave away, oh, that. And so I've started to take his advice, which was, what if when that thought comes up, you just address it and you say in a very logical way, yes, you did that, and that's done, and now you've learned, and you'll never do it again. And now we're moving on. That's one thing that has helped me to stop my mind from obsessing over it. And I think reframing too, because it's really easy to look at the past and things we regret and think that was a waste of time. But was it? There's something this coming to my mind. If you've ever heard of Byron Katie and the Work, if you haven't, she's fascinating. Like, go on YouTube, put in Byron. No,
Yep,
Byron? Yeah.
I think you're right, Byron.
Byron, yeah, is the first name. Katie's the second name. And she has this work where you take a thought, like a painful thought that it's like, I wasted all these years of my life, because of this. And so she has you go through different questions like, is that true? Can I absolutely know that I wasted my life doing this? And then it's like this inquiry for your mind, and it comes at your mind from all these different angles, and it shows you how much this one thought is affecting how you feel in your body. It's affecting how you treat yourself, how you treat other people, how you're living your life, and it helps you just see this is just a thought. And now you're here and you have a chance to do it different and move forward. So those are just what came to my mind with that. But I completely understand too, and have compassion for yourself too, and grief. I think there's grief that we have to feel. And then we get to a point where it's like, okay, that's now done. I'm here. And how do I want the rest of it to look for me? Oh, thanks for putting that link. Yeah, the work. Perfect.
Yeah, and so do you want to try to squeeze in one last question?
Sure.
What do you think the early warning signs of CNs are, and how can we protect ourselves from being vulnerable in the future to CNs?
Great question. And I talk about that a lot in Worthy of Love if you want to know more than what I'm about to say here. A few things. One, learning to trust your body over your mind. I look back on the beginning of this relationship and my body was screaming in all kinds of ways. And I didn't listen. And then noticing if another thing to look for is, are you finding that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt often? They said they would meet you at a restaurant at a certain time. They don't show up, or they're a half hour late, but there's always a reason and it's always understandable. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. Then something else happens and they apologize, you give them the benefit of the doubt. If you see that happening a lot, that's a red flag. If you think of your friends or people you know who are consistently loving, you're not having to give them the benefit of the doubt that much. Um, that I would look for. I would look for, do their actions match their words? Like maybe they say like, oh, I'm a person that does a lot of inner work and I read all these books and I grow so much, or I'm this type. Narcissists do tend to like to say how great they are in different aspects of their life, but are they really doing, are you seeing fruits? Are you seeing evidence for what they're telling you? Those are some things to look for. And then just how you feel, you know, in your body and emotionally, like when they're talking to you, even though they're looking in your eyes and maybe they're saying every single thing you've been longing to hear, does it feel true to you? In your gut area, does it feel good on a consistent basis? Are you being respected? Are you being heard? And does it feel respectful? Does it feel like you're being heard? I think I would say those are some to look at and pay attention to.
And Debbie, would you like to go ahead and mention your the Facebook group?
Yeah, a few years ago, I started an online support group. It's on Facebook. It's called, there it is, Healing After Experiencing. It's a long name, but Healing After Experiencing Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissism. Is that, yeah,
There you
support
go.
group. Yeah, I've handed off the reins to, I worked, after I started it, I knew I needed help. And so a beautiful woman named Linda Barnes came in and joined me. And so she and I worked, the two of us, for a while. And then since then, other people have volunteered and we've like trained them on, how we've done the support group because it's grown to be thousands of people. Um, so I have since left as an admin. I'll check in here and there, but it's a beautiful group, and it's a beautiful group of admins and moderators that run it right now. So yeah, it's a special group. It's not a perfect group, so you have to know that going in, that we do a lot of, or I used to do, and they do a lot of. I would say half the people that asked to come in, we rejected because we will look into their profile and there's so many fake profiles and red flags, and so we did a lot of background things that people don't see to try and make it as safe as possible. But it is also Facebook. There are thousands of people, so just know you can't trust everybody there, but there are a lot of really beautiful supportive people there.
Yeah, it's been a great space. I will stop that now, but I wanted to be sure that people were aware that that is a next step. And I can see some other people who have been members, of course, who've also benefited from that group. Um,
Oh, I love that. That's so good to hear.
yeah, so I know we need to let you go, and I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us this evening. Thank you, Debbie, for really sharing the benefit of, I know ultimately, I mean, it was, you went through something difficult, but you've turned it into something really wonderful for the rest of us. And I can't thank you enough for being willing to share that experience with us.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for putting this together and inviting me and saying all those things. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I don't think I introduced myself. So for the purposes of the recording, I am Elizabeth Hensley, the Material Services Assistant Division Chief at Prince William Public Libraries. So thank you to everyone who was able to take time out of your day to come and join Debbie and me. And I hope you get her book or books, like again, whether Amazon or whether through our library or Audible, whichever way works for you. They're excellent. And I wish everyone a good night.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming. I so enjoyed your questions and your all your notes. I'm scanning it right now.
But we appreciate people coming from all over the world. Truly. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll let you get back to your life, Debbie, but thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.